Okay, so imagine trying to fix a country's water crisis, but instead of just building a new dam, you decide to, well, replumb the entire nation. That's exactly what we're going to dig into today. China's South North Water Transfer Project, an engineering project so unbelievably massive, they call it a river in the sky. The whole thing really boils down to one almost mythical sounding question. How do you literally move a river hundreds of miles across a country to give people water? It sounds like something out of a legend, right? But it was a very real problem that needed a truly mind-boggling solution. So, here's how we're going to break this whole thing down. First, we'll look at why China had this huge water problem in the first place. Then, we'll get into the insane engineering of it all, including the three main routes. After that, we'll see how it became a lifeline for the North, before finally looking at the project's hidden and pretty staggering costs. To really get why anyone would even attempt something this huge, you have to understand a fundamental paradox about China's geography. It's basically a tale of two Chinas, all in one country. One is soaking wet, and the other is desperately, chronically dry. And I mean, the contrast is just wild. In the north, you've got the country's economic powerhouse. We're talking huge cities like Beijing, massive industries, and it's a major agricultural hub. But it gets very little rain. Meanwhile, the south is practically drenched with huge rivers like the Yangtze. So you see the problem, right? All the economic power and a huge chunk of the population were in the dry part of the country. So, with not enough water on the surface, what did the North do? Well, the only thing it could. It started drilling down, pumping absolutely unsustainable amounts of water from underground. But this was like taking out a loan from Mother Nature that could never be paid back, and it led to some really severe consequences, like the land itself sinking and these awful, choking dust storms. One of the most alarming effects was this thing called land subsidence. When you drain all that water from deep underground, the ground itself starts to compact and sink, kind of like a balloon slowly deflating. This, plus all the bone-dry soil, created these massive dust storms that would just blanket entire cities. It wasn't just a problem anymore, it was a full-blown crisis. So China needed a solution, and it couldn't be a small one. It had to be on a scale that had never been seen before. The answer was the South North Water Transfer Project, a plan so ambitious it's now considered one of the largest engineering projects in all of human history. The scale is just, it's hard to wrap your head around. Let's just start with the price tag, over $60 billion. And we're not just talking about money for a canal here. This was the cost of literally creating an entire brand new river system, completely engineered by humans. So how on earth do you even do that? Well, the project isn't just one single giant canal. It's a massive three-pronged system. Think of it like three enormous water highways, each designed to move water along a totally different path, and each facing its own incredible set of challenges. The plan has three main arteries. The eastern route is pretty clever. It actually reuses parts of the ancient Grand Canal. Then there's the central route, which is a brand new super aqueduct aimed like an arrow straight at Beijing. And then you have the western route, the most ambitious of them all, which is still a plan to one day tunnel right through mountains. But here's the catch. Each route came with a massive trade-off. The eastern one, using old canals, has to pass through heavily industrialized areas. So keeping the water clean is a constant battle. The central route gets cleaner water to Beijing, but to make its source reservoir big enough, entire communities had to be moved. And the western route? Well, it's still kind of a moonshot idea, probably because tunneling through earthquake-prone mountains is, a little tricky. But despite all these colossal challenges, the routes that are actually up and running have had a huge impact. For the parched northern plains, this project has been nothing short of a lifeline. It's completely changed the region's access to its most precious resource. And the benefits for the north are just undeniable. Major cities finally have a secure water supply. That's allowed them to drastically cut back on pumping out that precious groundwater. This is a big deal, because it's finally giving those depleted underground aquifers a chance to rest and recharge, bringing a whole new level of security for millions of people and the economy. But all this progress came at a staggering price. I mean, engineering on this scale always has consequences, and this project is definitely no exception. It brought with it some serious environmental damage and, maybe most significantly, a profound human cost.
Just to feed that central route going to Beijing, the main reservoir had to be expanded. A lot. And that meant flooding a vast area of land. And in the process, it displaced more than 300,000 people from their ancestral homes.
For the hundreds of thousands of people forced to move, the whole thing was devastating. Many of them said that the compensation they got for their flooded homes, their farms, their entire livelihoods, it was just completely insufficient. It's left behind a legacy of hardship that's still being felt today. And on top of that huge human toll, the project still faces ongoing hurdles. Pollution is a constant battle, especially on that eastern route, and nature itself has thrown a few curveballs. Droughts in the south mean there's sometimes less water to send north than they planned. Oh, and a significant amount of water is just lost to evaporation along those long open-air canals. And all of this brings us to one final, really critical question. The project delivered a lifeline to a region that was desperate, but at a huge cost, financially, environmentally, and in human terms. It really forces us to ask, when you're facing a crisis of this magnitude, is any price truly too high to pay for water security?